Namaste, hello, good evening. This is Ajit Kumar Jha, the editor of the Public Global and CEO of Power Pixar. And today I wanted to go back to Bihar since that is the most important news within the country. And yesterday, the Supreme Court, the highest court of India, gave a hearing to both sides, the Election Commission of India and the various petitioners. And let me briefly tell you what exactly the Supreme Court said. Although the Supreme Court of India did not stay the contentious special intensive revision, what is now called the SIR, of the electoral rolls of Bihar being carried out by the Election Commission of India, yet it did grill the Election Commission, and it basically asked the Election Commission to consider Aadhaar card, the voter ID card, which, by the way, is issued by the government, by the Election Commission itself. It is usually called in technical language the voter ID EPIC card. And third, the Ration Card. Now, Supreme Court asked the Election Commission that the 11 cards that the Election Commission had enumerated in the list, which I will let you know what those 11 cards are, they must expand that list and include these three. So, in a way, the Supreme Court is now, although the Supreme Court has finally left it to the ECI, but at the same time, it raised several questions with regard to why these three cards were not considered. Let me also point out, and I have made 2 videos before this on the subject, that the Aadhaar card is owned by 88% of the population of Bihar, not only those who are voters, the 8 crore voters, but the 13 crore population of Bihar, 88% of them have the Aadhaar card. So in a way, almost, I would say, a majority of the Biharis have an Aadhaar card. Next, the voter ID EPIC card, which is issued by the Election Commission. Almost all of the 7.89, or let's say close to 8 crore voters, existing voters, all of them have the voter ID EPIC card. And third, the Ration Card. The Ration Card is owned by 2/3 of the Bihar population, that is 66%. Now, the whole issue had become a major sort of point of conflict because the Election Commission of India in the past did not allow the inclusion of these three cards, the Aadhaar card, as I said, the Ration Card, and the voter ID EPIC card, in those list of documents they consider proves eligibility of citizenship. By the way, what are the documents that the Election Commission had in their 11 documents considered more important to prove your identity of and citizenship than Aadhaar, Ration, and voter ID card? What are those? Let me tell you the list of them. Land House Allotment Certificate. Now, think of it. What percentage of Bihar's population would have a land house? And that too, allotment certificate. For example, I am a Bihari. I have a land. I have a house in the village, in the agricultural survey document. That house is called the Gharari. Now, I found out to my utter surprise that my Gharari, my home, my village home, that I sort of as a child went for my holidays, that was given to me by my great grandfathers. My father grew up there. My grandfather lived there practically all his life. So did his father and my grandmother and all my uncles and others. That gharari, that house, is technically not registered under any government document. To my utter surprise, I found, and therefore I applied for the registration of it. Now, this is for the first time after 1970-72 that the Bihar government is carrying on what we call the agricultural survey. And almost everyone I know tells me that their gharari, which is their ancestral home, is not registered. So this land house allotment certificate that the EC considers as very important is utter rubbish according to me. But because I have a feeling just a few percentage people own the house, and it is not allotted by any government to them. It is the ancestral home. Number two, forest rights certificate. I mean, forest rights certificate, Bihar has probably less than 2% forest. Now, obviously, no one would have a forest rights certificate, maybe except for some tribals in some corner. But other than that, I really don't know who has a forest rights certificate. Third, NRC, a National Register of whatever. That does not apply to Bihar because the NRC had not taken place in Bihar, unlike states like Assam and others. So all these three documents that the EC has listed is almost what I would consider null and void. Caste certificate. Caste certificate is basically given to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBCs, and others, the most backward caste and others. And by the way, the caste certificate is given to them once they show their Aadhaar card. So in a way, the caste certificate is a derivative of the Aadhaar card. So they considered caste certificate important to prove the eligibility of being a citizen in order to vote, but not the Aadhaar card. The EC seems crazy according to me. Matriculation certificate. Now, yes, most of us, we don't have a birth certificate, but we have a matriculation certificate. Even though I was born in a hospital, but those days hospitals never issued birth certificate. The whole issue of birth certificate has only happened in the last 30-35 years. So only people of a certain age, if they are born in a hospital, have a birth certificate. So again, birth certificate, caste certificate, matriculation certificate is limited because Bihar doesn't have, universal literacy and certainly doesn't have universal matriculation. Not every person in Bihar, every voter is a matriculate. So again, all these certificates have very limited use. Then the other certificates, the ECI Election Commission considered important were pension payment order, only applies to government servants, right? Identity card provided by post office, bank, and LIC or other PSU, public sector units, prior to July 1987, not after that. So again, younger population whose identity was the most contentious, almost about, let's say, 2.93 crore voters who were not listed in the so-called 2003 electoral rolls. That was the problem. And for them, none of these issues that certificates we are talking about, except for a minuscule tiny population, is relevant at all. So the entire 11 certificates that the EC considers important to prove the identity of and to prove that you are a citizen of India, therefore allowed to vote, becomes kind of a joke because the other three, as I pointed out, the Aadhaar card, the Ration Card, and the voter ID EPIC card are the most prevalent, and especially the poor, those who are uneducated, those who have no means, those who have a small little polythene bag in which they hang these little 3 cards. Some of them have a Manrega card, the workers. So only these ones most of the people possess. So therefore, the Supreme Court asked the EC to consider all these 3, the Aadhaar card, the ration card, the voter ID, EPIC card, as more important or as important as the other 11 cards that they have mentioned. July 28th is the next hearing, although July 21st, the Supreme Court told the EC to come and give what they have been, the status of the entire thing. So I agree that the Supreme Court has not stayed the contentious special intensive revision, because the Supreme Court argued that the EC is well within its jurisdiction of Article 324, which gives exclusive powers to the ECI, to the Election Commission of India, to order to take care of elections, to order any person not listed in the 2003 electoral rolls. The EC can check their identity, but at the same time, instead the court said, and let me quote the Supreme Court here, after going through the documents, ECI has pointed out that the list of documents for verification of voters include 11 documents and is not exhaustive. Thus, in our opinion, that means in the opinion of the apex court, it would be in the interest of justice if Aadhaar card, the EPIC voter card that I talked about, and ration card be included. Of course, the Supreme Court argued it is for the ECI to still decide whether it wants to take the documents or not. If it does not take the document, then the ECI has to provide reasons for the same during the July 21st hearing and the July 28th. And within 1 week on or before July 21 and rejoinder before July 28. This, I'm quoting the Supreme Court order. Now, if you remember, 3 days before, Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia had, in a remark while he was grilling the Election Commission of India, he warned the Election Commission to not become what, and I'm quoting Sudhanshu Dhulia, Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia, he said the Election Commission must not act as a constitutional despot. He said, of course, the EC has the right to sort of do all kinds of revision if they so want, but 2 things must be kept in mind. It should not become a constitutional despot, which it seems to be in this case when the ECI defines what it considers important to have the right to vote. After all, the right to vote is the most fundamental power and right that every Indian citizen has. If you remember the Constituent Assembly debates, if you remember Baba Saheb Ambedkar, almost the father of the Indian Constitution, in a way, the way he had pointed out that the fundamental right to vote cannot be compromised. In fact, you must remember that in India, everyone has the right to vote. So every one vote counts, whether you have a PhD from a university or whether you are illiterate. In terms of voting rights, every citizen has the same right. So technically, you cannot debar citizens from taking away their right to vote. In fact, as I had pointed out in a previous blog, TN Session in 1995, perhaps the most iconic, popular, visionary election commissioner, and later on, of course, also James Michael Lingdo, who was another election commissioner, equally visionary, I would argue. Both of them, and especially TN Session, he had insisted on two things. One, he insisted on Dalit booths. In fact, he went around 1995 Bihar election. That was the time I started my journalistic career. And what an extraordinary election commissioner he was. He went around Bihar. He realized that the Dalits were often, in many areas, it was alleged, not being allowed to vote because they had to walk all the way to the voter booth, and many a time they had to walk through areas which had dominant castes other than Dalits, either the OBCs or the upper castes, and sometimes in this case Dalit voters were stopped and not allowed to vote by foul means. So TN Session went around creating Dalit booths, election booths in Dalit areas. The basic, you need 1,000 voter in order to create a booth. So he went around finding where the Dalit areas were, and he started creating those booths, and that ended up raising the turnout levels of the Dalits. And 1995 was one of the extraordinary elections in Bihar, and I was a participant, not only as a voter, but I was a surveyor. I surveyed 16 assembly constituencies all throughout Bihar. At that time, Bihar was part of Jharkhand. And the other big reform he had done was the Model Code of Conduct, especially putting sort of regulation, putting pressure on political parties not to throw away money illegally. Because the election agents at that time of the Election Commission of India would doggedly watch political parties if they were crossing the limit of expenditure set by the Election Commission. And that made TN Session, perhaps people still remember him in Bihar and all over the country, as an extraordinary election commissioner. Whereas the election commissioner today, he is doing just the opposite. What he is trying to do is, he is trying to get people who have the right to vote, he's trying to, through some kind of sort of narrow definition of what is considered as identity, what is considered as a citizenship, he is almost attempting to debar people from voting, people who are citizens of India. And that the opposition parties claim, the India Gathbandhan claim, the India Bloc claims that it is purely at the behest of the ruling party, because the BJP do not get the votes from largely from these marginalized communities like minorities, Alpsankyak, like Dalits, like the most backward. Therefore, they have asked the Election Commission, or the Election Commission in collusion with the ruling party is attempting to do this. Now, as I said, the Supreme Court has allowed the Election Commission to carry on their special intensive revision. They have not stayed the SIR, but at the same time urged and made it a big issue. And they have grilled the Election Commission on why they are not considering the three important identity cards: the Aadhaar card, the Ration card, the Aadhaar card, which, as I said, 88% of Bihari population, not only electors, 88% of 13 crore Biharis have. Ration card, 2/3 of Bihar's population, again 66% of the 13 crore have it. And the voter ID EPIC card, which almost all the voters who vote, which is 7.89, almost 8 crore of voters have. The Supreme Court has urged, and on July 21st and July 28th, this will become the issue, whether the EC will consider these three cards as part of the identity of the voter, not only the 11 cards which they arbitrarily listed. I'll end here. Thank you very much. And we will keep following this entire issue, because it is absolutely central to democracy. The right to vote is a fundamental right which no EC, however powerful, whatever the constitutional body, they cannot take away. Why? Because the EC doesn't guarantee us citizenship or the right to vote. It is the government of India which provides us citizenship and the documents. And last point I wanted to make, it is a shame. 1947, we got independence. It is almost 78 years. It's a shame, it's an embarrassment that the government of India has not yet provided the citizens of this country one document which proves our citizenship without any doubt. It is high time that the government of India comes up, before it goes on doing the special intense, before the ECI keeps on doing the special intensive revision all over the country, in Bengal, next time, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, other states. Before it does, let the government of India come out with one card which will prove our identity and our citizenship as Indians. Every other democracy on earth has it. Why not in India? Thank you very much.